We've already visited kind of the Studio Ghibli world with My Neighbor Totoro, The Red Turtle.
Got our foot in the door.
Our complete opposite in terms of their films, because we're going dark. We're talking heads coming off. We're talking limbs getting taken away, demons and monsters and all sorts of stuff, and some pretty dark, heavy material with Princess Mononoke. Welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe.
I'm Nick from the St. Paul Filmcast, and you already know what I'm going to say. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends, tell your girlfriends and boyfriends about the show. Thanks for listening. Thanks for following. All our fans and loyal fans can reach us by Instagram. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. Go ahead, drop down a comment. We appreciate it. And we're going to continue our series about animation. And we just talked about My Neighbor Totoro. Got it right. And then we're going to go completely off scale. What we can criticize the movie, what Totoro's not, to this movie, what it is.
Definitely.
So, good and bad.
Hayao Miyazaki returns with Princess Mononoke. Yeah. After defending his home from a demon, Ashitaka, now afflicted with a demon curse, is on the search for a cure. He soon finds himself caught in a battle between a mining colony called Irontown and the forest gods outside of it. And Princess Mononoke is kind of unique in that it is a film that is very dark for Studio Ghibli at times, but it's also such an important film to American culture in a lot of ways. I mean, James Cameron cited this as the biggest influence on his creation of Avatar. We had a recent...
I can see that now. Yeah.
We had a recent Nintendo Switch game. If you're Nintendo Switch players and you know The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which I feel is heavily influenced by this film. I mean, down to like the markings on the different creatures. There's been a lot of speculation that that's been the case. We even get Ahsoka Tano from the Clone Wars was modeled after San, the princess of the film.
This is the first time I've seen this. I got to get rid of my movie snottiness when I was in film college, actually, because I was in film theory and studies in the late 90s, and I just like, oh my god, I'm above animation, so I never watched this movie. But I do see a lot of elements of Brotherhood of the Wolf from France.
Oh,
yeah, because it was like the boar comes out and he's a threatening boar. But yeah, I was like, oh my god, there's a lot of that in that movie as well, of borrowing from Princess Mononoke. It starts off right away. You have a bad demon coming in to ransack the village. And I think, I'm not really sure. I try to research this, but I think if like East Asia, like China, Japan, and Korea, when you say you're possessed by a demon, it's not so much inside, it's outside. Like you're almost covered.
Yeah, there's a physical affectation of what's going on.
Like, so usually our culture, when we said possessed by a demon, it's almost like it's inside of you that needs to come out. When we talk about like a lot of it in Eastern Asian countries, when you're possessed by a demon, it's outside manipulating you as well, because they believe that your authentic self cannot be altered and changed, but you can be manipulated by your actions. So when we see the boar and he's possessed by a demon, it's almost like outside. Yeah. Like those tentacles and everything.
Yeah, the taking over of the creature into the point where when you see the demon at the beginning of the film, you don't know what's underneath.
Yes.
You know, and I think that's an element of it doesn't change you, it just consumes you and kind of forces you forward.
Yes.
I love the way this film starts. I think it's got a fantastic opening to it. I think it's exciting. It reminds me a lot of like the opening battle sequences of another Studio Ghibli film, Pompoko, I believe.
But it's
about like that, and it's also got the elements of the nature versus humanity, the conflict that's at play there. This is a very heady film, again, like Pompoko, where its grandioseness really like drives forward a narrative that makes you think. It really pulls you in and kind of like has you contemplate this world. And this is maybe the least kid-friendly of the Studio Ghibli films that I've seen.
Get ready to digest it. They also, like a lot of what Kurosawa do, is like bombard you with the action first. Get your action out first, instead of out with your story. Something that Spielberg and Lucas will always do in their movies. Get your action out first, and then we'll settle with the exposition and the story. This is kind of the same almost. Get your action out first. Oh my god, there's a demon threatening the town, and we'll show battle. And then the protagonist has a little bit threatening. Well, he's got captured on his hand too, but it gives him also powers as well.
Yeah. And I like that you brought up Kurosawa, because I felt like this is the style of Miyazaki on a Kurosawa kind of film. Like the Irontown just felt like the town that Yojimbo is walking into, you know? There was a lot of, I don't want to say style over the creature design, because Kurosawa never really did that, but like the world itself felt very much of that type. And that's probably why we're comparing it to George Lucas and Spielberg, because they were both such
fans of Kurosawa,
children of Kurosawa, if you will.
Of course, it's Studio Ghibli, so you can have a lot of young people, and you can have a lot of old people, and a lot of old people provide the exposition. And one of the favorites is the old man that makes soup. I love the scene of him and how he can sit on his sandals. I still watching it, like, I can't. I don't know. Like,
it hurts. It hurts to watch.
I know it's animation. I know some people in real life, they did that part of the culture can do that, but I don't know how you can walk on those sandals.
Yeah.
But that's the point. It's like they follow this formula of what you do. A lot of from what Kurosawa is, you get the exposition of the old man, like Yoda, very wise and everything. But it takes a while to get to Irontown.
Yeah,
even though we put that in the plot, it's Irontown. It takes about like an hour to get there.
Yeah, but I appreciate that. And I would say it's a film of two halves to me, in a sense where I think the first hour of the film is, even though it takes a while to get to Irontown, it's my favorite half of the movie. Because it's that character enters a town, kind of a setting where he's getting involved in a situation that's kind of beyond him.
Yeah.
But he also has his own character journey that he's on. I like that he's been told, you're gonna die. Like, sorry, bro. Like, you're gonna die. So it's might as well go out and try to find a cure, but you can never return home. Like, wow, that is a heady opening to a film, is knowing that your character can't return home, can't see his sister ever again. And, he's basically out to look for a cure that we don't have one, so you're probably going to be dead by the end of it.
It's going to eat you. Almost like the character Cable, which has got those mechanics that's just eventually is going to consume his own body.
Yeah.
The other thing is how women are projected in this movie. There you have Princess Mononoke, who lives in the woods. We don't really see her it takes a while to see her. It takes an even longer while before she starts talking.
Yeah.
And then you have the leader of the females in Irontown.
Mm-hmm.
I can't
remember either.
I can't remember his name. But they're not projected of overbearingly diabolical, or they're, the old maids or the moms or everything, but they have jobs. And I think it's a wonderful projection of female in this movie.
Yeah. You want two unrelated movies that we can relate together like this? Captain America Civil War, where you've got your two sides, and the filmmakers never once feel the need to tell you which side to go with. This is one of Miyazaki's best elements in the film, is that he demonstrates Irontown, he demonstrates the forest, but he's not telling you who's right and who's wrong. He gives these characters, internally I find myself siding with nature over the diabolical humans, but
it looks very hellish.
I understand exactly what Irontown is doing. I understand their need for their destruction. Yep. It's just that, again, like, you allow yourself to bring something to it and take out of it. And again, Miyazaki never once tells you these are the bad guys, these are the good guys.
And also there's a lot of wind.
Lots of wind. It's a studio. There's going to be a lot of wind there.
But I do like the selection. We can talk about how you made the movie, and I like the shots. Like, you have coming into town, but you also have point of view up above, down below. So it's not a really stationary, stationary almost. You just set flat, where's the eye line, let's go and draw from there. There's a lot of interesting angles and takes, and how it's edited. It's one of the best edited animation films, even though it's 2 hours long.
Yeah, it's 2 hours long, and it's 2 hours that could be shorter. We'll get into that with kind of the negatives, but I do agree that the sequences themselves are edited quite well, and it's how they're drawn using a mixture of 2D animation with a couple of computer-generated effects. You can see that a little bit more apparent in this film than in My Neighbor Totoro, because we were kind of talking how we weren't sure if there was even any of that in the film. Yeah. This is, you can tell there's certain parts of it where there's CG overlaid over the 2D.
No, it is
fantastic.
Right. Yeah.
But I primarily liked that POV shot of him riding towards town, and you get that galloping motion to it. And you can tell it's a little bit of CG overlay, but it looks gorgeous because you're combining those two worlds, and it's kind of like combining practical effects with CG in films today. Yeah. That's why Jurassic Park still looks good 30 years later.
Well, like I said, this is why I appreciate the style, because a lot of people are like, well, why do we have to take time of the point of view shot of riding a horse? Because that's a lot of moving up and down. That's tedious, hard work. And especially for Studio Ghibli, why not? Looks good. Let's keep doing it.
Exactly.
They'll never ever do the lazy route.
No, and that's true. Well, and again, even though this film is more action-packed, has a lot more story, has some really heavy, thick mythology to it, it feels like a unique experience where you can jump into it and breathe and see something new. Because I love the creature design. I like that the spirit of the forest spends its days as this deer-like creature, but then morphs into this giant I know the term for it I'm losing here, but like kaiju-like sized creature that oversees the forest. It's a really cool element to the film that, again, like striking visuals really, really elevate this film over most others.
And the little tree spirits that look like bobblehead trolls.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, here, like I said, the scope is magnificent. It's wide and just really massive. But they take time to really close up, like the boar's eyes, of the pain of really the Ashikaki's character, really. So even though it's a wide scale and they take time to draw wide scope scales, they also take the time to do a lot of extreme close-ups.
Yeah,
which could be a risk, because if you don't do an eye pretty good, it's going to look bad.
Yeah, it's more noticeable your mistakes, because when you do drive out, and I notice this a lot in kind of these anime style films, is that when you're allowed to kind of play with form and tone and style depending on how you're shooting your film. When you go back out, you can kind of fuzz things a little bit more, and it creates kind of a visual motif. But then you can drive in, look at those close-up elements too. The close-ups are gorgeous. They're very well drawn, very well animated, no matter how they ended up being animated. And you get to see something kind of unique that you don't get to see in other kinds of cinema.
And another thing I put on the notes is there's really no clear barrier of good and bad. Obviously there is a demon, but the demon's been forced to act because what is nature is being almost raped by mining.
Yeah.
But they need mining to survive the civilization. So there is that establishing conflict there of nature versus man, man versus man. And then Princess Mononoke, who makes a decision that she's not going to participate in it, and she's going to be strictly part of animal and nature.
Yeah, and so her character is really interesting because, again, she's never referred to as I'll call her Princess Mononoke, but she's never referred to as Princess Mononoke. It actually had to do with the translation of the title in the film, because the term Mononoke is a reference to an angry or vengeful spirit, but when they translated the title, they decided, let's leave that word untranslated, because we didn't have a good title for a film. Princess who is a vengeful spirit. That doesn't sound very good.
Princess who is a vengeful spirit will not work.
Right? Yeah, it's not as simple as I have a neighbor named Totoro, or I'm being spirited away. It's a more complex kind of character, and that's what I like, that she's a complex character, that she is seen as a human in a lot of ways, but they say multiple times she is not human and she is not creature. She is something special in between.
Yeah, and she rejects being human.
Yeah.
Or any related to human. She considers herself more, we would say, what's my spirit animal? Well, wolves, right? Very obviously. And much like wolves are kind of a threat to man, but they are part of the functionings of nature. They're very beautiful too. But we also, as humans, are kind of seen as a threat. Almost a lot of cultures. I think very few cultures will see a wolf as a positive. Yeah. They're usually projected like werewolves, like threatening. But I would think maybe Native Americans as well as East Asian regard wolves as a positive animal in nature.
And that's why having Ashitaka going to this world and seeing it from a cultural standpoint, we see it culturally different. The wolves are the protectors, the protector of this young girl, and she kind of utilizes their help to get where she needs to be. But yeah, I know what you mean. When I saw them, I was initially like, "Oh, they're bad. They gotta be bad."
Right, because they put that in Thor Ragnarok, which is the story of the Norse, is the giant wolf is bad. But that's our culture. We always, So, also with the conflicts of not only good and bad, also I would say different generations, because a lot of the old people are understanding what's going on. They have to constantly explain to the young people that this is happening.
Yeah, this is how it is.
This is how it is, right? There's a spirit representing all things in nature. And that's a good way to get your exposition out too.
Yeah, definitely. Well, there's a stigmatizing in this film. We have the lepers of Irontown are kind of, they're providing a service, but they're seen as being unable to provide anything other than this service. We also have
the women too in Irontown, right? They're doing their job, but it's like, well, it could be worse. We could go to town and be selling our bodies.
Yeah, well, there's very much that focus of we're viewing these people as what they do is who defines them. I mean, it's surprising that in Princess Mononoke there is an element of sex work that is showcased in the film, and I'm happy to see that they're viewing them as human characters who are being stigmatized and judged for that work.
Right. That's a good emphasis. A lot of people are judged by their jobs and not really what they're capable of doing.
Yeah, and in fact, San, the princess, is judged as a human, even though they tell them later on, not human. We showcase all of these different elements, and she refers to him as being of the town, like he was attacked by his own people, but he's not from Irontown when he's attacked. So again, she's viewing him as part of the enemy to her when he is not. He is of a different town, and he's been driven out of that. His identity has been taken away from him because he can no longer go home, and people keep attributing other identities to him. So there's a lot of that interplay about, who am I within the story here? Who am I within life when all of my identity has been taken away from me?
So if you take a sociology class, basically basics, you understand this called the single story theory, which is people, when you meet you, already line up a single story of you. If I said I'm from Minnesota, and people not from Minnesota, they already set up a single story of you. Oh, you like winter, or you like hockey, or something like that. Where this story is trying to break up the single story theory. Oh, you live in the nature, well, you must be dirty, or something must be bad about you. Or you are working an iron mining town, we must be evil and bad.
Yeah.
Well, that's not really true as well. So they're constantly trying to break up this single story theory idea. What you learn in sociology.
Well, and you know something too? Princess Mononoke is a great film to show to your hardcore political family members, because it's going to tell you that just because someone doesn't believe what you believe doesn't make them the 100% enemy that we have currently in our society today. We have such a kind of driving force away where if they're not me, then they're my enemy. I mean, literally, George Lucas used that in Revenge of the Sith. If you're not with me, you're my enemy. Only the Sith deals in absolutes, but I think that's something that's very palatable here, is that this film, again, much like Captain America Civil War, you can view both sides, and you should be able to understand at least both sides. Even if you don't agree with them, you should be able to understand. And I think we have a fundamental misunderstanding in our society today that this film could give.
Yeah. Do you like the ending?
So I struggle with the last hour of the movie.
I do.
Because I think the first hour is so strong.
Right. The second act is strong too. You got a lot of dealing with death and
But there's parts of this, and I would compare it almost to parts of Spirited Away, where like the finale of the film doesn't leave me where I want it to leave me, and I have to reckon with that. And I think I don't mind where our main characters end up at the end of the film and how that interplay is done. I think it's kind of unique and interesting, and it doesn't give you your Hollywoodized ending.
No, it's not. That's what I'm going to say.
I just don't feel like the last hour of the film is as strong as the first hour. We've got a lot. I mean, the film opens with such bombastic action and such high spectacle. And then we get to this element where he's kind of in the woods with her, and he's learning about their society, but they hate him, and also the humans, if he comes close, hate him. There's elements of Irontown being a mixed group. Again, like, they're not all stormtroopers that believe I have to shoot the guy.
No, they have a job.
Some of them have a job to do, and some of them are being forced labor to do those things too, where they don't want to be part of this Irontown kind of world, but unfortunately that's what the higher-ups want. There's a lot of giving you that. I wish we delved into that a little bit more than just at the finale when he's like arriving back at Irontown to kind of stop the attack. He gets there and then he learns like that there are some people that don't want to do what Irontown is doing. That would have been better in that second act ending a little bit more. I think the ending of the third act is better than the ending of the second act.
And so I think overall, I'm trying to break up the single story theory, but also I think the whole concept of the movie is, if you didn't have all of this conflict of nature and man and everything, the protagonists, Ashikati and Princess Mononoke, probably would have a love story.
Yeah.
But there is so much there's so much conflict, there's so much friction that they're never ever going to get together, even though you kind of they could have been.
See, I feel like they still could. I feel like there's an element there's
always that chance.
I just think that in a classical...
There's no such thing as absolute. There's always a 1%.
Yeah. I think there's a classical Hollywoodized look that they have to get together at the end of the film. And I like that, spoiler alert, that she says, I'm going to stay in the forest, and he says, I'm going to stay in the town. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't going to be emotionally connected.
No, there's not a finalized,
Yeah, and again, it's that absolute portion where just because the town doesn't have to end because the forest is beginning. The forest doesn't have to end because the town is beginning. There is an intermingling that's there. And I think if you didn't have the ending that they have with those two characters, you wouldn't get the absolute criticism of absolutes. that we get in the film. And so again, like it's a reckoning that you have to do, where it's not a film that leaves you where you want to be left.
And I do like the play of water in this movie, and you don't really have to really look for it, but water is always kind of like a refreshing, a rebirth, a cleansing. And I like that. Well, you got to get in the water to get away from the demons, or Ashikati has to go down the stream to realize his point of view, that maybe I'll get her point of view eventually. Then he screams, I'm here to save the day.
Yeah, exactly.
See you later.
Which
is the greatest runoff ever, even if it's animation. It's like her just like, what? I'll see you later.
Bye-bye. Hey, I've had a few dates end like that. So it's okay. Before we end, though, I do have to mention one fun story that I think, no one's a fan of one of the guys in this story, but I have to tell this story a little bit. When this film was picked up by Miramax, Harvey Weinstein tried to get involved, and he spoke to Miyazaki and said, I want to heavily cut the film, and I want to chop out some...
Well, yeah, because it's 2 hours long. I get it. You're right, yeah.
He wanted to Americanize it and give it really an easier kind of connectivity to it. Miyazaki walked out of that that conversation. He left the office, and a couple days later, Weinstein received a sword delivery that said, no cut on it. And eventually caved and let Miyazaki...
Wait. It had to be like a Japanese sword. It had like a katana.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
It had to be a katana. Right,
he received that, though. It said no cut from Studio Ghibli.
Awesome.
And eventually caved, and he hired Neil Gaiman to basically translate. Neil Gaiman did a lot of great work with translating Norse mythology and some of his work too, and he just understands culture very well. So Neil Gaiman Americanized the film to an extent where it's accessible, but basically didn't chop any major sections out of the film. Later on, Miyazaki was asked about what he thought about the film. He says, I defeated him, was what he said about the no-cut sword.
No cut. Because if you did an American version, we would just emphasize constantly the demon is the threat.
Mm-hmm.
Where here, I think you're winning if you put it in the backdrop. That is the catalyst to start the story. That's the catalyst to start the conflict. But we're not going to continually bombard you with it, even though that's a threat for everybody involved.
Yeah.
And if you did an American version of it, we will get bombarded with that all throughout the movie, that has to be defeated, just like Star Wars.
Yeah, so part of me wants to see that version of the film just once and then burn it. But I'm curious. Part of me is curious, much in the same way that I was curious when I watched the theatrical edition of Brazil, and then I realized there was a better version. So, you want to see it once and then you want to never see it.
That's why it's hard to critique Brazil, because the two different versions are so different. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm curious about what the Americanized version of Princess Mononoke would have been. But I would have only seen it once, and then I would have destroyed it for your benefit, everyone. Okay. But anyway, what did you think about Princess Mononoke?
I still would. I was hesitant to see it. I never really did research about it, but at the time when I was in college and this movie came out, I thought when the title Princess and its animation was like, oh, here we're doing with the Disney stuff.
The Disney Princess.
Yeah. I stayed away from it, and then it's like, oh, you would like it. It's like, I don't think I'm going to like it. That stuck with that stigma of having a princess on the title, that like Princess Bride and all that stuff. Then I was like, I'm not going to think I'm going to enjoy this. And now I understand the title's a hack job.
Well, and I spent so much of my life avoiding animated films because a good chunk of my time after I stopped being a child but before I started being an adult, where I was like, those are kid movies.
Right, yeah, you work in the video store.
Kid-friendly Studio Ghibli film. Yeah, and it's also maybe the most, I don't want to say snobbish, but it's a higher brow, elevated art form seen here. And I do think that while it's least accessible to kids, I think it might be more accessible to, if you're a fan of Kurosawa films, but you've never seen a Studio Ghibli film, this is your access point.
And I understand we're talking Studio Ghibli, and that's a hardcore following. Yeah. To a lot of, there's a nexus of people that love their films. And we're just doing a surface.
There's so many more layers to this.
Yeah.
There are people that do hour-long videos.
I think people are going to criticize us on how we're critiquing this movie, but there are people that really are followers of this genre.
Yeah, so let us know your thoughts down below, too, because, that's the thing I love about watching these movies is every time I watch them, I glean something completely different out of them. There's something more that I can attach to, and it makes rewatching them more fun. But I've only seen Mononoke twice. So I want to know what your thoughts are on the film, because maybe you'll help clue me into something I didn't see before. And Nick, this was your first time watching?
First time watching.
So there we go. two relative newbies for Princess Mononoke. We want to know what
I
maybe
actually love the first and second part, man.
Yeah, so
First
let us know down below. Don't forget you can like. Don't forget you can subscribe. Don't forget you can share. And also don't forget to check out the Patreon. Tiers start as low as $1. And that's the area that we look to when we want to figure out, well, what do we do next on this show? Because there's so many films and there's only 2 of us and there's only so much we can do. So
right.
help us out by making some of those choices on the Patreon. And if you can't afford to do that, help us out by sharing, subscribing, liking, commenting. We appreciate it. My name is Kyle Goethe, and you can find all my film reviews on goethefilmreviews.com.
I'm Nick, and I'm not going to do my money.